Good morning, all. I am Dr. Arohi Parmar. Welcome you all for the fifth day of online lecture series of Shalakya Tantra. As we all know, Faculty of Ayurveda, Parul University, and the Association of Shalaki India are always determined to serve the feast of the knowledge to the young minds all across the India. For the same, today we are here again with a new interesting topic, that is diabetic retinopathy and its Ayurvedic approach. Diabetic macular changes in the form of yellowish spots and full or partial thickness changes in retina were observed for the first time by Edward Jaeger in 1855. This was only possible as a result of the newly developed direct ophthalmoscope before around 150 years from now. Today, we will be discussing on the same topic. For that, I would like to invite our today's guest of honor, Dr. Pranav Bhagwat sir. Everyone can welcome him by putting welcome message on chat section. I think there is no need to introduce him. Sir is professor and HOD of Shalakya Tantra in Gomantak Ayurved Mahavidyalay, Goa. Till now, Sir has delivered 7 international seminars at Russia, Germany, and Holland. Sir is also working as visiting consultant in all these countries. Sir has achieved 27 awards and felicitations in various events, including Rashtriya Vidya Saraswati Puraskar, Healthcare Excellence Award, Bhuneshwari Seva Chudamani Award, Dhanvantari Puraskar, etc. Sir is Vice President of the Association of Shalaki since April 2019. Sir is reviewer in the index journals. Sir has presented 29 papers and 13 articles. He is also invited for radio talk in various times by All India Radio, Panjim. We are highly obliged to welcome him, sir, as a guest of honor today. Over to you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Arohi. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir.
Very good. Very good. So, very good morning to all of you, all my seniors and my fellow colleagues and students, lovers of Shalakya Tantra. A very warm good morning. Rather, I would say a cool good morning because still it's a summertime. Well, we are really passing through a very unique stage of life, wherein every day our beliefs are reforming, our faiths are reshaping. We are swinging between Remdesivir and Ramdev sir. Well, in this context of shaken realities, rebooting ourselves, there is one thing which is constant, which has been constant, and that is our thirst of knowledge. First of all, let me congratulate and thank Parul University, Faculty of Ayurveda, Dr. Toshi Khane sir, as well as Dr. Manjari Keskar ma'am, General Secretary of the Association of Shalaki, TAS India, for continuing this Jnana Yajna throughout this period and thus enabling students all over India, all over world to listen to the great clinicians, great physicians, great surgeons in the field of Shalakya Tantra. So rather than me being guest of honor, it's reverse for me. It's an honor of guest, honor of me that I am here amongst you. Thank you very much. Well, back in 2000, when I started practicing Ayurvedic Shalakya Tantra, with the blessings of Professor Dr. Kulwant Singh sir, Dr. Harshad Rai Mankodi sir, Dr. Manisha Rajgopala ma'am, Dr. Suma Sathe sir, Dr. Rajesh Pawar sir, Dr. Shanta Kumari ma'am, late Dr. NDP Nambudri sir, I came to Goa and with help of Dr. Sampath Bhatane sir, we moved ahead in the field of Ayurvedic Shalakya Tantra, and at that time there were very handful of Shalakis who were practicing Shalakya in Ayurvedic form. Well, the time has changed, the seasons have changed, and now there are many institutions, many students, many colleges which offer this course, many students which learn this course, and many Shalakyas are practicing Ayurveda Shalakya Tantra. And it is in very much need of an hour to do it. Whole of the world is looking at Shalakis, at Ayurvedic Shalakis, with a huge interest. They want us to perform, they want us to deliver so that their vision, their hearing, their many other problems will be restored. And I'm not telling this as a balloons in the air. I'm not telling this just to make you comfortable or make you show you some dreams. This is fact. Whenever I've been traveling, may it be USA, may it be Russia, may it be Germany, everywhere there is always a thirst. Not only the patients, but the doctors, the medical doctors who are there, they want to learn what Ayurveda has to offer about this. What is Ayurvedic principles about this particular problem? And hence, I think the world is yours now, especially for the budding Shalakis and the Shalakis like me and you. The whole world is waiting for us to deliver. Of course, especially in this area of pandemic, when there is a lot of uncertainty, when WHO is helpless, when ICMR is not giving us any guidelines, again, not only India, the whole world is looking towards Ayurveda, towards alternative systems, towards traditional systems for the answers. And I think this is the right time for a surge of Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurvedic surgeries, and Ayurvedic physicians. We must tap this opportunity. We must tap this opportunity with the help of the research, with the help of our undeterred efforts, with the help of our continuous efforts to treat our patients, with the help of Ayurveda Shalakya Tantra, on the basis of Ayurvedic basic principles, and not only treat them, present this result, document this result, show this data to the world, so that the world will understand that yes, there is a huge opportunity. There is the sun which is rising at the horizon, and the sun rays will be you, budding Shalakis, I'm sure. The only possibility, the only obstacle will be the clouds of laziness, will be the clouds of procrastination, will be the clouds of living in the comfort zone, and I think we must come out of that. Every Ayurveda person, especially Ayurveda Shalaki, has a lot of responsibilities. The road ahead is not of roses. It's definitely with a lot of thorns. But you are supposed to do it. It's your duty. It's your duty and our duty. Whole of the Shalaki community should come together and show the world the new path, the new way, which will be the right way, which will be the rightful way, which will be the way of the truth. And that's how the Association of Shalaki, TAS, comes into play. We are organizing a lot of conferences. We are organizing a lot of seminars. We are doing a lot of research activities. And I request, I plead to all of the budding Shalakis and their guides, their teachers, to come to the family of TAS. I'm sure you will be not discouraged. I know whatever hopes you will be having, you will see that they are getting fulfilled over here. Because we not only work in the field of keeping people together, we are working in the field of research. We are working in the field of continuous medical education. Not only that, we are working in the field of preserving our rights as a surgeon. If you remember a few months before, a few years before, we had won a case against IMA, and not only PG of Shalakis, but also PG of Shalya Tantra, PG of SRPT. They have won the rights to do surgical practice. Well, this battle will go on. We are not going to sit alone, but for this, we need a lot of encouragement from you people, We need you to be associated with all of us, because ultimately it's Samvadi Karya Sarika. Because ultimately it's Sangha Shakti Kalav Yuge. We have to come together under a wonderful banner of that, because it's a reliable banner, because it's the banner which is officially recognized by government. It is regularly audited. So there is no problem of any kind of financial or any other kind of misdeeds under this banner. So with this, through this media, let me ask all the teachers, all the students of Shalagi to be under the banner of TAS. Today's speaker, Dr. Pasha, is also a wonderful speaker, a wonderful clinician. I have met him during Urdhvanga Siddhi. Again, that was a wonderful workshop TAS along with blessings of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar we did in Bangalore. And the book is coming out in the name of Urdhvanga Siddhi. Dr. Sarveshwar Kar is working on that. Dr. Pasha will be definitely delivering a wonderful lecture on diabetic retinopathy. Again, diabetic retinopathy is another domain where we can deliver a lot. People are expecting a lot from us. Because the concepts of diabetes, the concepts of tridoshas going to the different patologies of the eye are unique to Ayurveda, and we can work on that to find out the solution. How the pathology starts from Meda Dhatu, then it jumps to Masa Dhatu, then to Rakta Dhatu, and then goes to Majja Dhatu. So all this Vimargagaman of doshas throughout the dhatus is wonderfully explained in diabetic retinopathy. And I'm sure you have studied this. I'm sure you must have found your own remedies for background diabetic retinopathy. I'm sure you are exploring the remedies for pre-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. And not only that, bleeding in the retinopathy. Dr. Pasha will be definitely in better position to understand, to make all of us to understand the unique features of diabetic retinopathy, the twists and turns in the pathology of diabetic retinopathy, and how we can win over it. I'm sure he will enlighten us with his talk. Once again, let me thank from bottom of my heart Dr. Manjiri K. sir, Dr. Toshi Khane sir, TAS India, Dr. Dave sir, for giving me opportunity to be amongst you. I know I'm not different from you. I'm just one amongst you. It's just somebody has to speak something. I've been honored for that. I'm really thankful, and I wish this is the penultimate day of our webinar series. I wish a grand success to all the Shalakis, that they will definitely prove their worth. They will definitely shoulder the responsibilities in a very unique and fulfilling way, and in very much accomplishing way. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Arohi.
Thank you so much, sir, for your encouraging words. We are very pleased to have you as a guest of honor today. Moving further, I would like to invite our today's guest speaker, Dr. S.M. Pasha, sir. It is said that leaders are made, they are not born. Sir has achieved many career goals at very young age. Sir is Associate Professor and HOD in Department of PG Studies in Shalakya Tantra, Government Ayurveda Medical College, Bangalore. Sir is very renowned Ayurvedic practitioner all across the region and has treated many patients in Ayurvedic way. He will be sharing his essence of clinical experience on diabetic retinopathy with us today. So without wasting time, I would like to invite Dr. S.M. Pasha sir for their guest speaking lecture. Over to you, Pasha sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arohi, for your kind and valuable words. Thank you very much for. And I'm very much humbled. And very good morning to everyone present online right now. Respected Dr. Dave sir, I think he's present, and Dr. Keskar madam and Dr. Bhagavat sir. I especially thanked the presiding speech by Dr. Bhagavat for giving encouraging and very informative and very uh, very valuable instruction what he has given. I'm very much thank you for that. Uh, the respected faculty members of the Ayurveda College, Parul University, and from different specialties, and my dear PG scholars, thank you for giving me an opportunity for being a part of this wonderful webinar series on Shalakya Tantra. I thank Dr. Uh, uh, Hemant sir also. He just spoke to me. I'm very much obliged to him. Uh, Dear friends, so we are going to discuss now about a very important topic we are facing every day in our practice, that is diabetic retinopathy. We all know it is how challengeable it is to treat and how what are the things we face in every day in our clinical practice. So this is a very important topic. So let us have a look on that. So first we shall study the what diabetic retinopathy in the modern aspects and modern perspective, and try to understand in our Patalgata dosha sthita lakshanas and the Ayurvedic perspectives of what the Shastra says, how we can bring a bridge between these two conditions and succeed in treating these conditions. So let us move to the. So what is diabetic retinopathy? You know, it is everyone knows it is a again uh, it is a disease or a derangement of the retinal vasculature uh, represented by the or appearance of the uh, exudates and bleeding, I mean leakage in the retina. So primarily it is a complication of the diabetes. It is a complication of the diabetes. So already whatever the damage done to the retina, we are observing and we are evaluating and we are treating locally. So at the same time, we have to treat the diabetes mellitus. Good glycemic control is very much essential. So as a Shalaki, we have to concentrate on the retina and what are the, we have to understand the Sampapti and break the Sampapti, and we have to take the help from the, so many investigations are available, and we have to make sure the things are going in the right way. So primarily the retinopathy is a disorder of the blood vessels of the retina. So characterized by the appearance of the uh, hemorrhage and exudates. So whatever the parts we see in the retina, primarily we'll focus on the optic disc. Three important structures are there: optic disc, then blood vessels, and macula levita. So whatever the any signs, if they are present, so they are in terms of these three involvement of these three structures only. So diabetic retinopathy is why it happens. Basically, there is a increased permeability in the vasculature, that is blood vessels or microvasculatures, and degenerative changes in the retinal tissue. So it is due to rather it is mainly due to the defective oxygen supply, that is hypoxia. And there it leads to the weakness in the capillaries. Later we discuss that in the pathological slides. So with the increase in the life expectancy of the diabetes, the incidence of diabetic retinopathy has very much increased. So here, so diabetic, as we all know, India is becoming, it is heading towards the diabetic capital in few uh, years also. So WHS has mentioned in 2011.7 million people were affected in India due to the diabetic retinopathy. So it is bound to rise, and it is estimated by 2030, it will be around 49.4 million people affected by the diabetic retinopathy. So here the type 2 and type 1 both are, they have equal chance to get these complications over the time. So whether the patient is having adequate control of sugar or not, irrespective of the control or non-control, The patient usually tend to get this situation after the over the 10 years. After 10 years, everybody is, having this condition who is suffering from the diabetes mellitus. So out of this percentage incidence, so 6 to 9% of people they are going blind every each year. So with the conditions, untreated conditions, and the advanced stage of the retinopathy, in case of when there is a proliferation is there, when there is vitreous humor is there, in those conditions with the uncontrolled sugar, so they end up in the blind. That is very bad thing and very sad to hear, and they lose the vision irreversibly. Means it is not recoverable. That is 6 to 9%. Coming to the vision by 2020 by WHO, eliminate avoidable blindness. So it comes under that heading only. Diabetic retinopathy is the main here the target disease. So the total prevalence of this retinopathy in diabetic patients is around 34.6% according to the World Health Organization. So in case of individual category, you see, you can have the proliferative diabetic retinopathy around 7%, 7.0%, diabetic macular edema, that is 6.8%, and vision threatening diabetic retinopathy, which is very dangerous, and that is around 10.2. Incidentally, it is very high percent. So, who is at risk for diabetic retinopathy? We'll try to figure out and we'll try to understand briefly how the diabetic retinopathy it is, how it is affecting, and what are the pathophysiology, signs and symptoms. So later we'll come to the Ayurvedic part. So risk factors, age is very important, duration of the diabetes disease, poor blood sugar control, the personal habits of smoking, excessive intake of alcohol, aspirin, hypertension. Again, it is also one of the important disease causing the retinopathy, that is called hypertensive retinopathy. Pregnancy, in case of toxemia of the pregnancy also, you see these kind of signs and symptoms. Then renal disease also. If the patient was suffering from the nephritis and any kind of renal impairment, when we see there is a increase creatinine, increase blood urea, there is a proteinuria. These the clinical findings, I mean lab findings, if they are present in excess percentage in the blood, I think these are the three important values. They are the excellent predictor for the presence of the diabetic retinopathy. They are the very good, excellent predictors. So come to the hereditary is also there, and other like factors like anemia and hypertension. So classification and features. So basically, we have number one is here the non-proliferative. It is an early non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, non-NPDR. So again, it is having two association, means the two subcategories, that without maculopathy and with maculopathy. So second, we have advanced non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. It is only non-proliferative only, but the thing that whatever the signs and symptoms are there, they are present in intense form or more aggravated and more aggressive. But in this condition also, we don't find any neovascularization and involvement of the retina, retinal detachment, and vitreous hemorrhage. It is again divided into the without maculopathy and with maculopathy. So third variety is that is very advanced condition, that is proliferative diabetic retinopathy. So we will find there is a proliferation of the new vessels into the vitreous, and so there is a tangential tractions will be formed, and it will be end up in the if it is not attended, not treated in right time, it may end in retinal detachment, causing the permanent blindness. So it is again having two sub headings, that is with high risk characteristics, without high risk characteristics. Let us look into the pathophysiology. So, diabetic retinopathy, first we have to understand this is an actually microscopically, it is in primary microangiopathy. So, microangiopathy means there is a, problem with the microvasculatures. So, in spite of intense ongoing research also, it is very tough to establish the real mechanism behind this condition. So it is a debatable and it is conjecture very, it is a matter of conjecture. It is very debatable topic. Still, it is not been established what exactly it holds in terms of the pathophysiology. So basically, due to the intolerance of the glucose and metabolic impairment, there is a deficient malfunctioning of the vessel walls, cells, and the microvasculatures. How does diabetes affect the retina? So patients due to the diabetes, they may get also cataract, glaucoma, other neighboring conditions also. But the most worst hit is vision, that is eye. So the first, it is the most main threat to the vision. So most patients develop diabetic changes in the retina after approximately 10 to 20 years. When the patient completes the 10 years of the duration, whether he is having, irrespective of the glycemic control, whether it is abnormal or normal, he will tend to get this situation. So what exactly happens in the probably we can understand events in the pathology. Let us see. So the two events occur in the pathophysiology of the diabetic retinopathy. One is microvascular occlusion. So microvascular occlusion, how it happens when in the microscopic, I mean the in the capillaries, what happens? First, there is a gradually endothelial thickening takes place inside that, and there is capillary basement membrane thickening and increased degeneration in the endothelial layer due to the defective oxygen supply and by the RBCs, and there is an increased stickiness and there is a heavy aggregation of the platelets. It will take place. Due to this, there is an occlusion occurs. Means there is the blood will not flow to distal part of the retina. So when there is a occlusion, there is a collection of the, you see there is a formation of thrombus also. You can see due to that thrombus and the weakness in the endothelium, so there is chance of uh, severe extensive hypoxia, a condition is developed. Due to that, so again we see the consequences due to this occlusion. There are so many consequences. Out of those, one is again you see this collateral arteriovenous shunts. So collateral why they form when there is a hypoxia. It is in nature's attempt to supply the oxygen to the needed parts. Then the body will start liberating vasoformative substance, and that will form the new collateral circulations. That is actually not good for the retina. The second consequence is cotton wool spots. They are otherwise known as soft exudates. Cotton wool spots, they appear in the retina like a fluffy margin. They represent the product of the degeneration of the nerve fiber layer. So they are actually due to the exoplasmic flow interruption. You see there is a degeneration in the nerve fiber, and they represent as a soft exudates, that is cotton wool spots. The fluffy margins, whitish spots you see in the retina while examination. So actually they are the degeneration of the nerve fiber layers. Then comes neovascularization. As I told, when there is a collateral start begin to appear, then there is a neovascularization. When there is a severe when the retina is suffering from the extensive nutritional deficiency by lack of oxygen, what happens? Body will naturally liberate the vasoformative substances. They cause the new vessels to form. That is called neovascular. That is also not good for the retina. These are the consequences. The second event which we are going to talk about, microvascular leakage. So due to the loss of parasites, so parasites, they are the mural cells, they protect the vessel wall. When there is a increased permeability, when there is a defective oxygen supply, you see there is a the integrity, the endothelial barrier that is there, the blood endothelial barrier that is compromised, and there is increased the permeability. Due to that, there is a defect with the loss of oxygen supply. There is a loss of degeneration of the parasites, and due to that, the vessel wall becomes very lax and it will start creating a pouch-like structures. That is what we call aneurysm. So aneurysm is a pouch formation of the pouch along the side of the vessels. They are micro aneurysms. So they profusely bleed and causing the uh, spread of the blood in the different parts of the retina. It could be due to the sometimes if they bleed if bleeding is leakage is due to the aneurysm, then it is called focal. When it is more, then it is diffuse. Second point is hemorrhage. Hemorrhage also it is due to hemorrhages can be seen in the form of diffuse and focal, and sometimes dot and blot hemorrhages. Sometimes flame shaped hemorrhages. So flame shaped hemorrhage is more evidential in case more it is commonly seen in the hypertensive retinopathy. Along the border of the vessels, you see the flame shaped hemorrhage. Very they are more evident in hypertensive retinopathy. So lipid leakage is nothing but hard exudate. If there is excessive leakage from the vasculature, the blood capillaries, the lipids start collecting in the deeper layers of the retina. That is, we call it is hard exudates. Hard exudates, they represent the lipid leakage from the vessels. So rest of the thing is retinal edema here and there. Retinal edema may be present, which is also involved with the macula also. Macular edema is very important topic to discuss in the diabetic retinopathy because it is a center point. So without retinal edema, involvement of the macula, we cannot see any signs and symptoms. So coming to the signs and symptoms, so usually there is no early symptoms by the patients unless we usually see the things in during the routine of the ophthalmic examination of the fundus sequelae. So when there is involvement of macula, then only the symptoms they start to appear. Uh, and the symptoms and signs are they are varying. I mean, with respect to the different stage of the disease. If it is early stage, if it is advanced stage, it is in complicated stage. They are varying. So common symptoms are the blurred vision is there, uh, then floaters and splashes, and sometimes there is a when it enters into the complication stage, is when there is a vitreous hemorrhage profuse, then there is a patient lose the vision, sudden loss. That is called sudden loss of vision also. These are the microaneurysms you can see in the slide. So yeah, microaneurysms, they are the formation of the sac-like structures along the borders of the weak vessels. Because of the compromisation of the vessel wall, it becomes very lax and destabilized, and the integrity is structural integrity is disturbed. Due to that, there is a due to the pressure of the blood flowing inside that, they push the vessel wall and causing the formation of microaneurysms. And this is intraretinal venous bleeding. In the deeper layers of means they form the arteriovenous shunts passing the bed. So that is called venous bleeding. Then hard exudates, they appear not like the cotton wools. They appear very whitish, hard substances. We can make out very pinpointed sometimes. And this is cotton wool spots. You can make fluffy margins also. You can make out here. Then flame hemorrhages and dot and blot hemorrhages. This is the case in the visual acuity of the patient, how the diabetic retinopathy sees the distant the vision. This is normal vision, how the vision with the diabetic retinopathy. This is the proliferative changes. Proliferation means the new vessel formation of the new vessels in the vitreous and more on the optic disc and sometimes towards the macular uvea. So how to detect the diabetic neuropathy? It is, very normal. All the tests should be done. Visual acuity is there, the proper history and presence of the diabetes mellitus, whether the glycemic control is adequate or not. Then we have to routinely we have to carry out all the examination of the eye, including the intraocular pressure, refraction, fundus examination. The out of this is the most important is fundal fluorescent angiography. Fluorescent angiography of the fundus is very essential at this juncture because it is the only tool which can give a very clear-cut objective features of the retina. And clinically significant macular edema is unrelated to visual acuity. Means it is not at all related to the visual acuity. Most of the times, patient may be having diabetic retinopathy. Still, the visual acuity is 20 by 20 because when there is no involvement of the macula. So it can be only be when the macular edema is there, then only there is a problem with the visual acuity starts. Patients start seeing the things blur. I mean the blurriness of vision will be seen only when there is the involvement of macular edema. So fluorescent angiography is very essential for this management of the diabetic retinopathy. Here I forgot to mention CSMO, that is clinically significant macular edema. So in clinically, it is a criteria, it is a guidelines to notify to address the edema which is involved with the macula. Say the retinal edema which is within the 0.5 mm of the fovea, it is also considered as a significant macular edema. And hard exudates which are within the 0.5 mm of the fovea, it is also considered as a significant clinical significant macular edema and any other retinal edema having the one disc diameter and in that one disc diameter some part 1.5 part of 1.5 mm part is should be associated with the macular area that is foveal area, then it is also considered as the clinically significant macular edema. So again, the development of the diabetic retinopathy is time dependent. Even in the face of the optimal blood sugar control patient, with, as I told in previously in previous slides. So patient with long-standing disease, more than 10 years, disease can be expected to eventually develop some form of the retinopathy. Whether the point to be noted here, whether there is a whether patient is having his patient is telling that since 10 years I'm having the history of diabetes mellitus. I am very much under control. Everything is controlled. Sugar is normal. I am following good glycemic control. At after 10 years, eventually the patient develop the retinopathy. This is a very important thing. Then comes prevention. As a routine things, we have to assemble points here. The many problems can be treated with much greater success with caught earlier. So diabetic patients were able to maintain appropriate blood sugar, diet and exercise play with very important role in the overall health and those with the diabetes. Uh, and by proper assigning the scheduled meeting and a scheduled routine examination with the ophthalmologist, so it can greatly uh, we can reduce the possibility of the eye complications if there is a regular medical checkups. Management, coming to the management, there is no yet established cure for the diabetic retinopathy. Only the things and the signs and symptoms have been addressed with the uh, and only we have the preventive treatment in modern science, that is laser surgery called pan-retinal photocoagulation is usually the treatment of choice for this problem. And if it is in advanced conditions, the vitrectomy is an option. And the goal of the treatment is to arrest the progression of the disease and prevent the further complications and to save the existing vision. So, what are the aims of the photocoagulation? Role of laser in diabetic retinopathy. So, aim of the photocoagulation to just to prevent the leakage and retinal edema. What we do in laser is there is a burning of tissue ablation. So the destruction of the all the leaking vessels, that is very important. Once the leaking vessels are destroyed, then there is no bleeding. So by that you can prevent the exudates and retinal edema. And to prevent the neovascularization, we have to again there is a way to find out the hypoxic area of the retina, and we have to destroy that hypoxic area by usage of the laser. Destruction of the hypoxic area. What happens again due to the non-availability of the oxygen and enough non-availability of the enough oxygen supply to the local tissues in the retinal tissues? What happens again? There is a liberation of the vasoformative substance. Again, they will initiate the formation of the vessels, new vessels, and which may grow over the disc as well as the in the vitreous. So the main focus should be to reduce the liberation of the vasoformative substance that is achieved by the destruction of the hypoxic area of the retina, and to prevent the edema and exudates, hard exudates and hemorrhage, where to destroy the leak, all the leaking vessels. So two things happens in the photocoagulation: destruction of the leaking vessels and destruction of the hypoxic area of the retina. That is the main objective. So what are the gray areas in the this photocoagulation? So all patients are not benefited by the laser. In most of the diseases of retina, laser treatment is worsening the condition of the retina. It creates sometimes blind spot, and it also damages the some good area, healthy area of the uh, retina also. So there is a problem. Many patients are seen they have complications like peripheral visual deterioration. Uh, it is very not good thing to hear. Hence, one may not notice dramatic improvement in vision. Rarely, laser treatment may accidentally damage the normal, even as I told, normal tissue damage also that causes the again the peripheral blurring of the vision. So, high cost of treatment modalities, which is not affordable with the average and below average economical individual. That is also very important socio-economically. So, management through Ayurveda, it is a need of an hour. So Ayurveda can offer better solutions and can address the condition more effectively, which can, you know, by adopting the local procedures and by a better prayer of the aushadis, we can arrest the progression of the disease, and we can prevent the leakage and neovascularization and restore the structural and functional integrity of the retinal vessels. That is the aim of the treatment. So very much it is needed. That is very much stressed upon us now. So by effectively avoiding complications encoded in laser intervention also. So the what we can avoid that complications which are there due to the intervention of the laser also. So diabetic retinopathy and the Themira. So Madhumeha Janya we routinely call the near correlation will be always Madhumeha Janya Themira. So you don't have any no direct reference as a Madhumeha Janya Themira. So many times in the various scattered information, scattered references, classical text. So Themira is also a Upadra of Madhumeha. In the Upadras of Madhumeha, he has mentioned Charaka Chikitsa. There is Timira is a Upadrava. In Netra Prakashika also, Timira Darshan is a Upadrava of Lakshana of Prameha. And Granthi and Meha are the cause of the Netra Rogas according to the Chakra. There is a direct and sometimes indirect references are there. In explaining, Sushilta also mentions the complication of the Prameha, where he mentions the Pratishaya also very important complications. And Hatha, this thing, Emira, and as well as uh, he has mentioned Anjanas in the context of the Prameha also, Turakadi Anjana. So that is somehow it is related to the eye. Anjana is not required as a normal, what we understand in the treatment of Prameha, but he makes the mention of the that Anjana, something relating to the eye involvement. So how we have to approach this condition clinically through our Ayurvedic treatment? First, we have to understand what is Samprapti, then we have to try to bring close to the retinal appearance to our Ayurvedic Samprapti. Then we have to go for breaking the Samprapti, that is Samprapti Ghatana, then finally scheme of treatment. So what is the objective? Aiming at the restoration of the structural and functional integrity of the science of Drishtipatala, which can be achieved by adequate control of Madhumeha and drugs which are having Shotagna properties and Shonita Stapana and Ropana Karma, then Kapha Nisaraka and Rakta Prasadana, Srotodrishti Nirhana and usage of the Chakshusha properties, means the drugs which are having Chakshusha properties we should use. This is the we can understand for our understanding the pathology. Sampraptis nidanas, as you know, Agni is the main root base cause. Then Amapati, Samadasha Rasa Pravesha, and increased Madhur and Kapha Bhavas. Then it may enter into Dhatus, that is Dhatu Gatatva. Then when it enters in Dhatu, there is Anyunya Dhatu Pidana. Then Rakta Vidagdata, that is, we can call it as Raktavata, Vata, Lakshanas, Srotodrishti, which is Rakta Srotodrishti, and Siras Vaishama. So this causes the loss of structural and functional integrity in the Drishtigata Siras. Then Dhatu Prasanchana means then the leakage, then Raktasrava we see in the retina, Shota will be there, Avrodha, then occlusion is there, Rakta, Alpata means hypoxic areas means there is no enough blood supply. Then we have, then when we enter the next stage, that is Keshikotbhava means neovascularization, formation of the new abnormal vessels. Samprapti analysis, again, you know very well, different, the Vikalpa Samprapti here, the Ati Pravarti is there, Sangha, Margamana, Hiragranthi. Hiragranthi means, again, you have microorganism in there. All the four Vikalpas possibilities we can very well appreciate in the retina, all four. Ati Pravarti means, again, neovascularization means, Sangha, you can understand is occlusion or due to the hypoxia, and Umarga Gamana, and that is can understand the perspective of the hemorrhage or exudates. Hiragranthi is microorganism. So here I tried a little bit comparing the things to understand better. So Pratama Patalagata Timira, so there is a, the Lakshana of the Raktakshaya is Shira Shaitilya. So that can be attributed to the loss of parasite and formation of the microaneurysm in the first Patam. When we analyze these symptoms in the Mamsakshaya Lakshanas, we have Dhamani Shaitanya. Improper apoptosis means death of the cells and breakdown of the blood retinal barriers. There is a compromise of the permeability of the blood vessels that can be well understood, well attributed to the second patella timira. Then comes Medakshaya, means the Sandhi Shetal is an important lakshana in the Medakshaya that can be understood in terms of the protein loss which is there in the tight endothelial junctions, endothelial cells junctions. And finally, Majjakshaya, obviously, when there is a Majjakshaya, we see Timirdarsha, there is a blindness. I mean, there is a reduced visual acuity that can be related to the axonal degeneration, that is loss of passing of the signals, that is in the axon. When there is a nerve fiber degeneration is there, axonal degeneration there, that we what we see as a soft exudates, cottonwool. So definitely that will break down the continuity of the nerve impulse, visual impulse, causing the blindness. That is called Timira Darshana. That is the fourth quarter. When it involves, when it reaches, then these are the signs we can understand based on the uh, patellas. Dhatu Kshayadaya diabetic. Then coming to the Chikitsa. Yes, this is the we can divide the chikitsa as a. I'm telling here very common approach to the diabetic retinopathy. What we can incorporate in our treatment principles as a comprehensive approach. Sthanika chikitsa is very important. First, we have to first we have to understand we are treating only the complications of the prameha or madhubeh. We are only addressing the problems which are there in the retinal vasculatures and the retina. So actually we are treating the complication of the diabetes mellitus. So the first half of the treatment should be directed to the very good metabolic control of the diabetes mellitus. That is, some other specialty should look into that and take proper treatment schedules for that. So let next half of the related to the retinal complications, where as a Shalaki, where we have to address that conditions. So here the Sthanika Chikitsa is again Tarpada by Mahatriphalagata. Mahatriphalagata, which is very well Pitta and Vata Shamaka, and by its virtue of its properties, it is very nourishing and gives strength to the all the dhatus of the retinas, including rasa, rakta, mansa, meda. Then comes Putapaka. Putapaka, as you know, this is we are using Ropana Putapaka. So Ropana, what it does by virtue of its ingredients, and it is having the healing properties. All the drugs what we use, they are predominantly having the Tikta Pradhana drugs. So they very well specifies the Shopa Lakshanas, or that is inflammatory changes and inflammatory process. Then comes Anjana by Drishti Prada Varti and Haritakadi Varti. Yeah, Drishti Prada is very, it improves the vision very well, and by other virtues, it also affects the kapha dosha. It specifies the kapha dosha by that effect. There is a kapha nisaraka activity will be taking place, and there is a resorption of the exudates and the hemorrhages that can be very well addressed. Then Takradhara also we are doing by Takradhara with the help of even we can add Vasakadika Shachurna with that. Takradhara, usually it affects by its mechanism of action, by its procedural mechanism also we can have the effect also. That is in every Takradhara, Dhara generally does the vasodilatation and causing the more blood flow. So it enhances the more blood flow. If we add some drugs like some Chakshusha drugs also, that effects also can be seen. Then Shodhana is Nasya by Sharbini Taila, and Chakshusha Pasti can also be advocated. That is the Madhupeli Kabasti. You can add the important your wish of drugs in that. Then Abhyantara Prayoga is the very, I would like to highlight here, the very important Kashaya is that is Mahavasadi. Mahavasakadi Kashaya explained by the Yoga Ratnakara. I think the 17 ingredients we are very much using here since very long, many years since my uh, when I was studying here as a teacher scholar from our gurus and our HODs in those days. It is very well practiced here, Mahavasakadikata. So we are getting a lot of result in this Kashaya alone. So what is the beauty of this Kashaya is, it will bring down immediately the hemorrhagic status. Means that the hemorrhage, whatever the bleeding is there, including the vitreous also, in cases like Eales disease also, it has very good efficacy. The efficacy is very wonder, yeah, very appreciable result is there. So Mahavasakadi Kosha, it has got all the Tikha Pradhana Dravas, so it has multi, effect. Result. It acts in different ways. It combat the diabetes mellitus also. We have seen many patients having their low after taking this kashaya. Many have reported, there is a decrease in the blood sugar level, and the healing is very much fast in the uh, with this kashaya. All the tissue, the leakage, whatever the leakage is there, and whatever the weakness is there in the we treat it as a urna, which shopa. So in the retinal vasculatures, there is a very well, you see there is a grand healing properties what we see in the Mahavasakati Kasha. At the same time, it is also used in the increased intraocular pressure. In case of glaucoma also, we have seen many patients showing lower incidence in the uh, intraocular pressure. So I think uh, this is only the one drug can does the wonders in the retinopathy and glaucoma. Then we have the Pratyadhikvata just to combat the Patalgata due to its Patalgata indication, Patalarolas indication. It is very well, again, it is anti-inflammatory and it specifies the edema and any other leaking things. Then as a Rasayana treatment, Saptamata is it is continued for desired period. And Chakshushabasti is also can be planned. This is the comprehensive approach. These are the procedural things we have to incorporate in the management of the diabetic neuropathy. Again, the drugs may vary. Drugs where what kind of drugs you're using, your choice of your drugs, using the Potapaka, Anjana, it is left to you. So discussion, diabetic retinopathy, disease of the Drishti, Patalagata, Roga, Kapha Pitta along with the Rakta vitiates initially, and chronicity determines by Vata dosha, because Vata dosha at the end it will affect the see capacity, means vision. It affects the vision, causing the blindness. Rasa Rakta, Mamsa Bedhari, Dhatus affecting and eventually Raktava Sroto Dushti and impairment in the Prakrita Karma of Alochaka Pitta. So there is a disturbed Prakrita Karma of the Alochaka Pitta. By adopting these kind of procedure and medicines, we can very well treat this karma. We can bring back the Prakrita Karma of the Alochaka Pitta, which is the seeing, means uh, uh, perceiving the images. Then comprehensive approach towards Samprapti Ghatakas will definitely helps in breaking the pathology and bringing normalcy in retinal tissues. And prevention can be achieved by proper screening, adequate metabolic control of diabetes mellitus, and administration of the Chakshusha rasayanas like Amlaki, Nifala rasayana, etc. Coming to the conclusion, so what we can achieve by adopting this kind of all comprehensive treatment procedures, then Rakta Strava is controlled. Effectively, we can control the Rakta Strava, and resorption is promoted. Resorption means the water, the subretinal fluid is there, and the exudates are there. They are being engulfed by the macrophages and they are released into the blood circulation as a waste product. So that procedure, that phenomena, that activity can be very well improved. Stanika Pandalakshana is cleared through the Rakta Prasadana. Stanika Pandalakshana means the hypoxic area is clear. Uh, Shota is also controlled. Shota in general, inflammation. Uh, exactly, it is inflammation of the blood vessels only. So that is being very much well addressed. Then visual acuity gradually improves. Advancement of retinopathy changes combated, so we can prevent the further stages and entering to the further stage or complications like vitreous hemorrhage and vitreous tractions and retinal detachment that we can prevent very well. So upadravas means complications like neighboring structure complications like glaucoma, cataract, vitreous hemorrhage also prevented effectively. This is about the conclusion. Here I'm sharing a lot of cases are there. One I'm sharing because of the assigned duration of the session. So I'd like to share one case here. A 54-year, one more case. A 36-old male patient was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes around 2 years back when he had complaints of the chronic fatigue and a routine examination. He was also diagnosed with mild NPDA, changes in both the eyes, and was put on regular oral hypoglycemic and a routine checkup. Changes of the macular edema was found and was advised for the intravitreal injection for the further management of his eye changes. Hence, he visited the GMC Bangalore for further management. So here the treatment what it is given to them Nishamlaki Churna, Drishti Pradavarti as angina for 15 days. Chandra Prabhavati is very good indicated in the Netra Rogas and Rasayana Vati, and it detoxifies uh, the tissues. It is very effective in the retinopathy. It is given for 15 days, and Mahamajishkara Kasha to have the Rakta Prasadana effect. It is given for 15 days. Sapta Murtalo 1 BD for 15 days. Sakradana with Mahavasakadi Kashaya for 7 days, and Mahavasakadi Kashaya internally 15 ml BD for 15 days. So, Amlaki soaked in the Mahavasakari Kasha, you can use it as a takra or can kept overnight and can be mixed and can be used for the takradana. This is the before treatment and during treatment and after treatment. So the blood sugar also has considerably it has come down. Urine routine is normal. Cholesterol, visual acuity it was 636, 624. Now during the treatment it was 618, 612. Now, at the end of the treatment, it has a little bit improved, that is 612 partial and 619. So, reduced exudates, odd exudates during the treatment is observed, then reduced hard exudates and dot and bot hemorrhages during the observation of the when the treatment has finished. That is after the treatment. And the fundal changes, we have a picture of the fundus. So the exudates almost resolved, and there is hemorrhages also. It has come down completely. So that was a case of mild, mild reactive retinopathy. This is the case. You can see here. There's a macular edema. That mark is there. Arrow mark. That is showing that it's macular mild edema is there, and the hard exudates are there here and there. Mild hemorrhagic spots also there. So this is the before and after treatment, where you see after treatment the almost retina has come to normalcy. There is no appearance of the exudates, and hemorrhages almost more than 50% they have reduced. This is a fundal photography of the that particular patient before treatment and after treatment. So the this is about the diabetic retinopathy. So the gist is, we have to, this is a very important disease. We very frequently, very oftenly get these patients in our practice. We need to work on this. We need to find new ways to combat this situation because many people are ending up in the blindness. So our treatment should be, should be directed to the cause as well as the local pathological events, the signs which appear in the retina should be properly handled, and they should be addressed very well in the right time, and uh, by usage of our different procedures and by usage of the drugs. So that can save the patients and then to the next stage of the diabetic retinopathy, preventing the blindness. So with this, I conclude uh, this session on diabetic retinopathy. So, a diabetic, I will thank you because proper tracking means proper tackling the condition that steals your vision. So with this, I conclude the session. I take this opportunity to thank all the faculty members, Dr. Hemant sir, Dr. Pranav sir, Dr. Ravi sir, and faculties from the other specialties and my dear PG scholars for giving me an opportunity to share my views on this topic. I thank one and all.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your excellent guidelines on diabetic retinopathy with us. Sir, we have received one question from
Yeah,
Tarun.
yeah, please.
Yes, sir. The question is, the herodine of leech is an anticoagulant, so it will
Hmm.
cause bleeding. So in hemorrhagic case in diabetic retinopathy, can we do Jalokavacharana?
So Jalokachana in diabetic retinopathies, we have not done it so far. We have done it in case of in conjunctivitis and in glaucoma. In case intraocular pressure, we have tried, we got a good result in that. We have not tried this application of the leeches in diabetic retinopathy. And it is not, I think it is not a good idea to go with that. So we have to understand the pathology and act accordingly.
Okay, thank you, sir. If any other have any questions, they can ask directly to sir or they can contact sir anytime after the session. I am pretty sure that the lecture delivered today by sir will be helpful to all the UG students, PG students, PhD students, practitioners and faculties of Ayurveda. It is said that not acknowledging what you are offered is like covering a gift with wrapper and not giving it to someone. So, I would like to thank today's guest of honor, Dr. Pranav Bhagwat sir, guest speaker, Dr. Pasha sir, Dean, Faculty of Ayurveda, Dr. Hemant Toshikane sir, President of TAS, Dr. Haridra Dave sir, General Secretary TAS, Dr. Manjari Keskar madam, Dr. B.G. Kulkarni sir, Dr. Rajiv Dole sir, and Dr. Harish Daga sir, and all other senior faculties who have helped in organizing this brainstorming session. I am thankful to all who have joined today and made this series successful. On behalf of TAS President, I request all PG scholars and faculties of Shalakya to become a lifetime member of the Association of Shalaki. To become a member of esteemed association, please contact Dr. Haridri Dave sir. We will meet tomorrow at the same time with another new topic. Till then, stay safe, stay happy. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, one and all.
Thank